Hi, hello, and welcome back. I hope you had a good networking session. Our next speaker is Ashwini Deshpande. Ashwini is a 1989 graduate of NIT Ahmedabad, and along with two co founders, Ashwini leads Elephant, India's largest independent integrated design consultancy with offices in both India and Singapore. Elephant has been consistently ranked as the number one design agency by multiple people, including the Economic Times Brand Equity Reckoner. The agency has won multiple prestigious design awards from around the world. Ashwini, you have 45 minutes followed by Q&A. Over to you.
Thanks, Suresh. So I'm going to begin with Namaste, which is actually the greeting of the hour or year or the decade, maybe, because we don't want to shake hands and we want to stay safe and well. And I hope everybody is staying safe. So Namaste, and I hope you're having a great time at the conference. I'm sure you heard some great talks. So the topic of this whole session and the conference was very intriguing for me, and it was the culture connect, and that really got me thinking. And I'm going to take you through one of the very interesting culturally aligned case studies that we worked on, and of course, I'm very open to anybody raising their hands and asking questions anytime. And Suresh, I hope you can facilitate that. So I'm going to just begin a little bit into the background and then going straight into the project. Uh, so I'm going to start with where it all began for me. I grew up in a small town called Aurangabad, and it was really small in 60s and 70s when I grew up there, part of Maharashtra, India. And I'm sure all of us have this one embarrassing photograph, family photograph that we felt like hiding from everyone for years. But I think I'm old enough now to share that with everyone. So that's me on the extreme left, and that's my family. Very proud of it. So I grew up as a younger child in Aurangabad, and interestingly, my parents were super liberal. So with both daughters, they had taken this very open attitude, and they said that you do whatever it takes to make you happy. Interestingly, that was not the norm then. It's the norm now for all the millennials parents. But in the 60s and 70s, it was a norm to get your child to study hard and score very well in 12th standard, and then get them to join either medical or engineering streams. And well, I did study hard. I did really well in my studies, but thankfully, my parents didn't say that you need to join engineering or medical. So, that was my good fortune. The extreme to which they were so liberal. I just want to quote an example. In the in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, my elder sister, who you see right here, she formed a cricket team, a women's cricket team in Aurangabad in late 70s and early 80s. Now that's phenomenal, right? For parents to actually encourage their child to do what they want. And so I had seen that happening, and I was completely open to possibilities, and I knew I was not going to do medical engineering, etc. And my whole world was really 1.5, 2 kilometers from my home to my school. Very little exposure to what was happening in the world. We barely had one cinema hall that would show us global movies, and also very popular ones, so nothing phenomenal. And the only exposure I, of course, had was books, and my parents were very liberal with that too. So everything that we achieved, the prize was always a book, and that's really what I grew up on. And then came the time when one has to decide what one does eventually. And I was all of 15, 16. And sort of luckily hit upon this whole idea of design. And, we had no idea what design is. I had no idea what designers do, whether it's a profession, whether it actually has a career, whether it makes money. No idea. None of us had that. But yeah, as encouraging as they could be, my parents said, go ahead and follow your dream. And ignorance is bliss. So while NID, I think, used to take barely 24, 25 students every year throughout the Indian area, and I didn't know that, so I just didn't know it was so tough. So I said ignorance is bliss, and I got through. And then came the next phase, which was Ahmedabad, which was another state, which is Gujarat. And to send your daughter all the way to another state to study in those days was not a norm, really, because uh, you know, there were no STD phone calls. We had to book a trunk call to speak to each other, and there was no direct transport from Aurangabad to Ahmedabad. Yeah, India was that in those days. But they took the plunge and they sent me to Ahmedabad to study at NID, at the National Institute of Design. And, that's where the whole magic began, because NID really literally transformed the way I was thinking, the way I was looking at education, the way I was looking at career. And though I had no idea, but things were changing for me. There was a lot of unlearning to do, because after 12th science, one is so used to giving tests and getting marks and being graded and so on. Interestingly, at NID, I was free. I was never compared to somebody else. I was always compared to only somebody who I was in the previous semester. And that kind of liberated me to actually learn to learn. I think so. If I were to look back in the whole course of my life and look back at NID and I say, what did NID really teach me? I think NID taught me how to learn, and that's the greatest gift that I took away from all my 5.5 years at NID. And the next phase, of course, was setting up the next phase, which is Elephant in Pune. And this is an interesting decision in my life, because in the late 80s, there really wasn't an organized design office. So, if one were to actually apply for a job as a designer, there were not too many design agencies, so to say, who were actually accepting designers across multiple disciplines. And as youth goes, we didn't realize what an adventure we were getting onto, and there was literally nothing to lose. So six of us came together and actually formed India's first largest still surviving multidisciplinary design office, which is now at 32 years and going strong. And I'm very, very proud to say that it was an adventure, and it's still exciting every day as I go to work or sit at my desk and think of all the possibilities that are going to come up every day. And it's never a dull day. So if any of you who are students of design, I can assure you that this is one path where there is not a single dull day, and you can look forward to many challenges, many exciting times, and many places where you know that you actually made a difference to how people live, how people go through their lives, and you made a positive difference. So that was my next phase, and of course I continue with that. uh, Today's context, where we are talking about culture, literally the context of culture, I want to go back to the year 2000, when I was suddenly exposed to something which we were not thinking about at that time. So in 2000, Elephant was a growing design business, and we were growing with larger teams and exciting projects and more disciplines being added and so on, and more geographies being reached out. But a very interesting thing happened in 2000. A very well known designer called William Harold Wong visited India, and we happened to meet him. And he asked us, so it's great, Elephant seems to be doing fine, but how much of cultural reflection can we see in your work? And that really got us thinking, because one was not conscious at that time of how much of culture is reflecting. And one always looked at the West, unfortunately, for I mean, there's nothing wrong with the Western designers, but one always looked only at the West, unfortunately, for seeking excitement, inspiration, motivation, and benchmarks. But there was a wealth of designers and design work across Asia, which there was very little exposure to. And we were actually the closest to that culture, right? I mean, Asia is actually, if you look at Asia as one, there's so many commonalities and there's so much happening there. And all of us, actually, from Asia, all of us designers were facing the same problems, which is, the large Western networked agencies were coming to all the countries in Asia as soon as the markets were opening up and opportunities were opening up. And They had the wealth of experience. They had worked across the globe, they had worked across so many continents, so many kinds of categories, domains, and so on. I mean, design was a 100-year-old profession in the Western countries and not so much in Asia. So, if a client were to look at a design company in Asia, why would they actually look at that company? Because if they had an option of global experience, global network experience, why would they look at us? And this really was the question that William came to us with. And he said that, if one were to ask that question honestly, we should be able to answer. And what should be our answer? Our answer should be that, look, we are brought up here. We understand the culture like nobody else does. You cannot come from outside in and learn the culture the way you can learn, or you can reflect from inside out. So he suddenly made us aware that our work actually can be richer if it reflects our culture. So every time there's a challenge that we are solving, if we look inwards into our culture and our cultural shifts, our cultural answers, our cultural trends, and maybe there's a wealth there to be discovered. And this made us literally aware of how much wealth we had, which we were not even using, or we were using maybe subconsciously, but not really bringing it to the fore. So I think 2000 was the year of turning point in terms of understanding that culture is extremely important to preserve and to bring into your work so that you stay unique and ahead. And that's really what happened. And we became a part of the Design Alliance Asia as Elephant, as William was kind of gathering people, like-minded people around Asia, and calling them to be a part of his alliance called the Design Alliance. And he invited Elephant to be in it. And I think we are super privileged and honored that we are a part of that, and we sort of learn to look inwards inside our culture. Uh, many years passed, and I'm going to move to an opportunity that happened, because that's the project that I really want to share in terms of culture and context. It is, it was the year was 2007 8, and the opportunity actually came in from Hong Kong Design Institute. Actually, sorry, 2010, 9 and 10. So the Hong Kong Design Institute actually had a query from a fund called Create Hong Kong. Now, what is Create Hong Kong? Create Hong Kong was actually a government initiative. Hong Kong used to be a British colony for many years, as most of you know, and it had come into its own being. It had become a part of China, and it had actually come into its own being for a decade by then. And Hong Kong actually was trying to rediscover what does it stand for. Is Britain its core culture, or is China its core culture, or does Hong Kong have its own culture, and how do you define that, and how do you preserve that, and what does it draw from the other Asian cultures, and what does it give away to the other Asian cultures? And so this fund was actually established for research, and it was supposed to help Hong Kong to sort of discover itself and find its way forward. And this was a perfect opportunity for the Design Alliance, because we were across 13 Asian countries, including Hong Kong and China, and we were the perfect opportunity in a sense that we could literally discover what lies ahead for a place like Hong Kong. What should it pick from, and what should it take forward? And so this was something that came through the Educational Institute, and we were actually tasked as Design Alliance Asia to find out what is Asian culture. Tell us something about Asian culture so that we can preserve it, we can take it forward, or we can modernize it, we can give it a contemporary context. And it was as open as that, and that was fantastic, because very few governments actually do that. I hope somebody in the governments somewhere around are listening. So what happened when such an open brief comes in? You start questioning, what does one do? What next? And this is a beautiful quote. It says, "When you know better, you do better." So why is the government trying to understand more? Because they want to do better. When you know better, you do better, and that really was the crux of it. So how do we help them or facilitate them to know better? And that really was the question. And so we said, what should the project be? Should we, you know, look around for culture of Asia and define that in some way and tell that to the Hong Kong government through this great opportunity that we have to collaborate with them and HKDI. So we said, what is culture of Asia? Or what is culture of any place? It's so difficult to define because it needs to be a little tangible. We can be esoteric and define culture, but that doesn't take us anywhere because that doesn't actually help us take things ahead. It's just a great conversation, but then what? So we said, what is culture of Asia? Where can we actually see culture? And we started looking at tangible places like, is it art? Is it craft? Is it architecture? Is it objects that we've used through the years? Is it rituals? Is it music, foods, language, scripts, textiles? What is it? What is culture of Asia? It's so vast. And how do we even begin to research all of this? So we said, listen, this is too vast. So we need to kind of be a little more realistic because, well, the project timeline was something like a year and a half, 2 years. And we said, if we were to study all of these things, we need to find a tangible hook. And the tangible hook actually was colors, interestingly. I mean, all of us as designers like colors, right? We like to study colors, we have an opinion on colors. Even non designers have opinions on colors, right? So we said, let's pick one aspect out of it, out of the culture, and try and look at or try and research things around art, craft, architecture, music, food, etc. But let's pick one tangible piece, which is colors. And we kind of decided on Colors of Asia as the hook, and we went back to the Create Hong Kong Fund and we said, this is what we want to research. And they were most receptive. They said, yeah, please go ahead and tell us all that you can across 13 Asian countries that we had our back end resources from. So that's how really the project started. I personally really am intrigued with colors. I have been a trends consultant to colors, across various fields, including Asian Paints, which is the largest decor and paints company across Asia. And color really has been a topic of interest. So I said, this is right up my alley, and so did many other designers across the Design Alliance of 13 countries. So what happens next? How do we actually define or look at color? And we said, what are those instances where colors define culture or culture defines color? I mean, this is a street from Hong Kong, and all of us know that a particular color is used for a particular reason. So as you can see, yellow for crossings or for zebra crossings or for vehicles to sort of move in a particular way. Color is used so strongly for behavior, right? And on the other hand, if you look at this picture from a festival in India, which is Pune has a really large Ganesh festival. Pune is where I am right now, and I live here, and it has a very big tradition of Ganesh festival. And there is this, there are these drums that are done across the city. Across 10 days, and it's a big celebration through the beats. And yeah, the city literally beats, the city's heart beats to these drums. So is this also a manifestation of colors? Is there a reason why they're wearing a particular headgear and a color of the drums and so on? So where do we begin? What do we study really? Or this is a street in Singapore, and it's highly reflective of a mixed architecture from various places across the world, because this is a street which used to be once frequented by the Perinicans, which is again a mixed culture breed. So you can see the influences of the West, and you can see influences of China and so on. So, what should we study when we say color? What should we really study? And that was really the big question, because when you begin a research, you really need to have some kind of a hypothesis, some kind of a framework, and move forward. And many interesting nuggets. For example, it seems in Thailand, each day of the week is assigned a certain color. And children are taught this through a nursery rhyme, and they grow up knowing that a certain day means certain color. And it seems, if you even today, if you just scan the way people dress in Thailand, the locals, you will probably see a reflection of this nursery rhyme. So there are still people who dress in a particular color on a particular day. So there's so many color traditions across, new and old. I mean, they may be culturally seeped, they may be centuries old, or they may be just half a century old. But these are things that are rituals, that are traditions, that are, they happen across the culture and they form the new culture. So, what do we study? Or, for example, this is a procession in Laos. So, it's a funeral procession in Laos where women wear white, and there's a particular kind of chanting that they do and what they carry and the way they dress. What should we study when we say colors of Asia? What is it? What is that hook? And so the brainstorming started, and most of us who are on this webinar are designers, I'm assuming. And we know that when you put so many heads together, there's so many ideas, and sometimes it's great and sometimes not so much. So this was just a kickstart. It was a meeting at the HKDI in Hong Kong, where they sort of, the Hong Kong Create Hong Kong Fund and the Hong Kong Design Institute sort of explained what their dream was and what the research was supposed to be, and we started ideating. And it wasn't that simple, of course. So, what you see around the table are people from the Design Alliance from 13 countries in Asia. They are all designers of repute in their own countries, and they run their own local design consultancies. And as William, who's the founder of Design Alliance, says, they all value culture and they try and bring culture to reflect in their work. So, that's really the like minded lot that you see here. So this happened, the kickstart happened, and then many meetings happened, but we were just not able to come to some kind of a conclusion on how do we do this research project. Now just try and imagine if somebody gives you an idea and says, go and research about colors of Asia and come back with something tangible, where will you begin? Where will you start? And that was really the tough question. And all the wise people, all the wise designers in the world didn't really have an answer. And many meetings happened from one country to another and to another, and we still didn't have an answer. And a lot of time passed. And then eventually, what do you do when you really don't know the answer? You go to the guru, right? I mean, I believe you have to go to a guru, and you have to have a guru. You have to be fortunate to have a guru. So among us, among the Design Alliance, we have three very senior designers, like gurus. And one of them is An Sang Soo, who's from Korea, and he's the design master, he's a design guru. Well, he's literally given Korea its digitized script. So if he didn't do that, Korea wouldn't be visible to the world through their script. So he's, at that level, and he's a part of Design Alliance, and he's been there and done that, and a very very wise man and a very mischievous one also. So if any of you have ever followed An Sang Soo, you would know that he would catch you and he would make you pose with one arm on your eye, and he has a whole collection and a whole project where he makes you do this. And one day I'm sure he'll come out with an analysis of what people do when they cover half their heads, half their faces. So we went to him. I mean, he was of course a part of it, and we went to him and we said, we don't know how to go ahead on this research. What's your opinion? So can you be the lead? Can you be the lead curator, and can you tell us how to go ahead, because we are not able to come to a consensus? So he accepted, a very wise man, very old man, very experienced man. He accepted. He said, of course, I'll do it. Let's go ahead. And so we went ahead with him, and many more meetings followed. Of course, as you can see, the red hat person is An Sang Soo, and he's always wisely telling something, but still no conclusion. Eventually one day he drew this sketch in Singapore on one late evening when we were ideating, and he said, this is it, I have figured it all out for you. You asked me to be the curator, I have figured it all out, it's done, it's here, my job is done, just take it ahead. And we looked at that sketch, and I invite all of you to look at this sketch and tell me what it means. So all of us stared at it and stared at it for hours and probably days, and looked at the words. We even turned it around to see if it makes sense, and it didn't. I'm sorry, but we really didn't understand what he was trying to say. So of course we went back to him. He said, okay, let me simplify it for you. So this is what he drew for us. the master, right? So you can only stare and be amazed. But this is what he drew, and according to him, this was so detailed that he had even written the names of people who would do precisely what job. He drew their sketches and he said, "This is what this person will do. This is what this person will do, and this is the whole project." He said, "Now, if you don't get it, I mean, come on, I've done it all." So anyway, so that at that point we started seeing a little bit of a sense, and he started explaining a little more, and we said, okay, what colors are we going to actually do? Because when you say colors of Asia, which colors are we actually going to research around? So he said it's simple. We will do the basics, which is red, yellow, blue, green, and we'll also do black and white, because black and white have a lot of significance in Asian cultures, so across in other cultures as well. But in Asia, it has a big significance. So we'll do these colors. We'll only ideate around these colors. I mean, research around these colors. So that's what we went forward with. And then we started deciphering what his sketch was. What his sketch actually told us was that we need to research across four axes. So, across Asia, across the 13 countries that we were researching across, there are some similarities and there are some differences. And that's really what we need to find out through stories. And there are some natural occurrings and there are some man made things. And we need to again find out those across the axis and figure out what is the difference. You know, is nature same across Asia? Is the man made or man intervention same across Asia, or is it different? And he said, let's just figure everything around these axes on those colors. And we said, okay, that's one more layer. So, what should we look around for? And we again got these tangible subjects. We said we look for textiles, languages, foods, rituals, architecture, politics, design, popular culture, nature. And because some of us were very, very passionate about few other things, we added in masks, because in Asia, masks have a lot of significance. And we said if we dwell around all these topics and only figure out what is similar, what is differentiated, what is natural, what is man made. Let's just focus on these. So, these are the three layers that we worked on for this cultural project. And, it sort of started making sense if you look at the sketch now. And we started moving forward. And just for example, now what happens next? Because now you know what you're researching. You're researching across the axis of colors, across the axis of topics, and across the axis of natural, man made, similar, and differentiated. But how would these stories come in? And also, because we were working across 13 countries in Asia, and each country had its own limitations and possibilities, and none of the designers are equal, right? So each one has some certain plus points, strong points, and strengths, and some weaknesses. So we had to create a framework around which we'll bring stories to share. So we created a framework where we said we'll pick an image across one of the subjects, we'll pick a color across the five colors that we had chosen, and we'll give a little description to the story. And the story should always come with answers to why being asked at least five times. And in research, it's extremely important because you cannot see anything at the face value. So, for example, I'm going to give you this example, and it's interesting for all of us, I think. We've always seen monks wearing some kind of a yellow, saffron, orange, brown, almost veering towards black, or sometimes maroon. Why do you think they wear this color? Where did it come from? Anyone has any idea? I'm sure some of you have, and some of you have Googled. But let me tell you why they wear this color. So monks always were supposed to be self-reliant, Atmanirbhar, as the word is known now, or as the word is popular now. They were supposed to be doing everything themselves for themselves. So when they would wear a robe, the dyeing of the robe would be done through locally available natural materials. So if the monk is living in a forest, whatever materials he could find around, whatever plants and trees that he could find around, or flowers and leaves, the dyes that could be made out of those would actually color the robe of the monk. If the monk lived closer to the city, then the plants and flowers would change. If the monk would live closer to a sea, then the plants and things would change. There was no Pantone shade given to monks. They were not told that Pantone whatever so and so XYZ is the robe that you need to wear. But what they were told is you need to be self reliant. Look around, use local materials. What a message! Use local materials, make dyes out of those if you want a color, and be done with that. So this was a beautiful story that we found just by picking one picture of a monk, and we said, why is this monk wearing orange or deep yellow? And like that, we started collecting stories. And every country was given this framework. And every country, every design office had a dedicated team within themselves who started looking for stories of colors, which were of significance around the topics that we had sort of picked up. And at the end of the 6 months that people were picking stories, I think everybody had gathered more than 1,000 stories each. So we had about 15,000 stories. And as you can see the cards we literally had 15,000 stories to sieve from, to curate from. And I'm like particularly happy, proud, and pleased with myself that I was the editor of this project and I actually got to read, understand so many stories from so many cultures. I mean, I personally got so enriched and I tried to share it as much as possible. So this went on for a while. We were trying to curate and we were trying to see stories. And again, if you remember the framework of same and different, natural and man-made, we were trying to sort of try and classify the stories through that. There were some common stories, there were some very different stories. There were some stories which didn't fit in color, but were interesting nonetheless, but we had to leave them out. And this went on again for a couple of months, I think, in Singapore. And finally, we started seeing connections because, after all, the whole point was connecting, right? I mean, why were we doing a research across Asia? We were trying to see what really comes out of it. Uh, yeah, I'm sorry, I've lost the sharing. Can somebody help me? Are you able to see the sharing?
Yes,
All right, yeah, okay. Are you still able to see my screen?
yes, Ashwini, we can see your
Okay,
screen.
because I have lost the screen. Are you still able to see full screen? Okay, so I'll move forward. Uh, just give me a moment. I'm not able to move the slides.
Hi, we're able to see your screen, but the
I
slide
know,
is
but I'm
still
not
there.
able to move the slide ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You
Something is
might
gone
need to
wrong.
just shut the presentation down and start it again momentarily. I think it will work.
Okay, I'll do that. Please give me a moment.
Sorry, Ashwini will join us in a second. Just a small.
Sorry. I don't know why this did happen,
I'm
but
just telling people in the audience that Ashwini will join us. Just figuring out a little technical glitch with the slide presentation.
yeah. Please give me a moment. Am I back?
Yes, we're back.
Okay. Okay, so the whole point of it was connecting, and as you can see, these are all countries that were participating, and how do we see connections between the commonalities between these countries, and how do we see what's going on? And that little line that you see in the middle, that's the Mekong River, and that also creates actually interesting patterns because it runs across many countries in Asia, and it actually reflects in so many things in the culture of each of those countries. And so finally, we of course had to curate what we had to go forward with. And I'm just going to give you a glimpse into a couple of subjects. So, for example, if you were to plot all the countries and what happens across colors in just one ritual, which is weddings, uh, can you see the connections? There are reds and there are yellows and there are whites and so on. And yeah, there is so much of commonality during just one ritual, and there's so much of difference, because in some countries red is the color of weddings, and in some countries white is the color of weddings, and we have to of course ask why 5 times to see where did the white come from and where did the red come from, and all of this was literally being researched by all the teams as we went forward. Similarly, food, which is a very, very interesting topic for everybody in Asia, because the food culture is so rich, and you have to see, what happens across the colors of food, and are they related to rituals within each of their lifestyles and so on. And textiles, this was a big revelation because most of us believe that indigo happens in our country. Like in India, we believe indigo is Indian. Interestingly, that's not so, because Laos has a big indigo culture, and so does Indonesia, and so does Japan. And we were able to make all those connections through, just understanding and seeing stories, the backstories that helped us understand that. So the whole point, like I said, was connecting and to find, where did it all come from? Do we all belong to the same culture? Are we different? Where have we actually differed, and so on? And that's really how the research project went forward. And so many interesting stories came forward. We had to curate. Of course, we couldn't go forward with 15,000 stories. So we had to, of course, curate and go forward. And then we said, what is the identity of this project? You saw all those connections happening, and we actually took something from that, and we said, where do all these connections happen? They actually happen on the palm of our hand. We if you stare at your palm, there's so many lines that crisscross, and there's so many things that happen, and that's really your identity. And we wanted to reflect that as the Asian identity across the colors. So that's really the identity that was designed for Colors of Asia, which is the palm of your hand, which is so unique, and of course the colors that reflect across all the fingers, and it's as unique as your own handprint, and yet it, all of us have it, slightly different but same. So what you see on the right side is actually the place of the exhibition. That's where it took place, which is Hong Kong Design Institute. And I'm going to tell you a few stories from some of those, and those should be of interest. So, if you were to look at the colors of Asia as the red part that we talked about, red is very, very significant in most parts of Asia, right? I mean, right from the bridal dresses across some cultures to, the red brick structures, to the wooden toys, to, of course, the food that we eat. There's so much of red all around us, and I've picked a couple of stories to just tell you a little more about what we discovered during this cultural research project. So what you see here are red envelopes, and very, very well decorated with, golden motifs and filigree and so on. So these are called hongbao, and hongbaos are really what it means really is the festive envelopes, and these are what are used for giving gifts out during the Chinese New Year. So the elders put in some cash inside these envelopes and give out that as a gift to the younger ones in the family. And these are like tradition, so it's done traditionally, and it's never questioned. And over the years, the designers picked up this tradition, and decided that they will give it its own identity. And in China, if you ever discuss this with somebody in the design field, the biggest topic would be, what is the right red? Have you done your red packets or red envelopes with the right red? Is the hongbao right? And if you go to any place during Chinese New Year, you'll find thousands of these beautiful designs. And it's a tradition. And it's a big, big, big market. It's a big business. So red really is significant in that time and that part of the world. And well, it's something that we don't know so much about. Picking up another color, yellow, which was also a part of our cultural research and of significance, of course, across the world, but so much more in Asia. And again, right from the haldi that we use in India for many festivals, to the Tiger Festival, to, of course, the gold across all our cultures, yellow is of a big significance. And I've just picked a couple of stories to tell you. The first story is a yellow flag that you would see in Indonesia if there is a death in the family. And as usual, everywhere, if we see a story coming out, we ask why 5 times, and we started figuring out, where did this come from? Why do the Indonesians put yellow flags outside their house if there's a death in the family? And interestingly, it's not way back, but as you would know, Indonesia was a Dutch colony for a long while. And if the Dutch were bringing a ship to the shores of Indonesia, and if they had some dead people on the ship, they would want to notify people on the shore about the same. And so they would put a yellow flag. And if, because yellow is seen from a distance, right? Yellow is, they say that people who are almost blind can't see anything, but they can sense a yellow. So yellow is seen from a distance with the least amount of light around and so on. So the Dutch people used to put a yellow flag on the ship, and the Indonesians on the shore would understand that there are dead people in the on the ship, and they would prepare for it. This happened about a century ago. But somehow this kind of got into the Indonesian culture. So today, if you see an Indonesian house where there's been a death, there would be a yellow flag outside. And perhaps nobody even knows why, but this is the backstory. So you know what not to do when you're designing for Indonesia. This one is, of course, much closer home. This is the Tiger Festival in south of India, and people literally paint themselves to be like tiger and to behave like tiger. And there's a dance and there's music, and it's literally letting the monster, or not the monster, but the tiger, come out and personify as the tiger. So that's another yellow that we have in India. Moving on to a blue. So interestingly, blue is a color which is of the first preference across the world. So if you ask people what is your favorite color, and it seems Stefan Sigmaster did a research some time ago to ask people what is their favorite color. It was hands down, it was blue. And well, that's that. And what does blue mean in Asia? Let's try and find that out. And I have a couple of stories. Of course, there is, we have the indigo print, as I already mentioned, and then there is a cult in India which only wears blue, and then there are gods in India which are supposedly blue skinned, and there are evil eye ward-offs in the Middle East which are blue. So blue has a very different significance, and why so? I think some of us might have seen something like this. There are people who try and personify the gods. And why are gods blue? Why is the Shiva blue? Has anybody questioned that? And there are again myths. Of course, when we ask why 5 times, there are many stories that came up, and there are a couple of stories that I'd like to share. One of the story is that Shiva is supposed to have somebody was poisoned, and Shiva is supposed to have taken that poison onto himself so that he could save somebody who sort of worshipped him, and that poison gave him blue color. And of course, it's a myth. We don't know if it's true or false. But the other reason, which I find far more interesting, which is blue is infinity. Blue is something that you cannot define. You don't know where it starts and where it begins and where it ends. Sky is blue and the ocean is blue, and it doesn't end, right? So the concept of God in the Indian philosophy is something like that, it's infinite, it's indefinable, and it's, you don't know how to sort of capture it within one thing. So blue kind of captures all of that, and says that it's infinite, and that's another myth. I don't know which one is, well, these are all myths. Moving on to green, and here there's an interesting discovery. So I think there are many things, of course, right from the betel leaves or the pan to the masks in the south of India to these. I think they're called ketapetus, which are the leaf packets, to the Hong Kong green, which is supposed to be the urbanization of Hong Kong when they use that green, to the, of course, the military green and army green and so on. There's so many green interpretations, and of course, in the Islamic world, green has a very different connotation, which is of prosperity and so on. So, which is, green, of course, had a lot of stories. But this particular one is interesting because we just read about or heard about the red packets. And, I had heard about the red packets because I happened to visit Hong Kong or China. But I had no clue that a part of the world also has green packets. So, the Middle East, Lebanon, Turkey, Indonesia, they all have green packets, which serve the exact same purpose as the red packets or the hung baos, which is being used for the elders giving out gifts to the younger ones, the cash gifts. And so the green packets is also a big deal. And interestingly, we all lived in Asia, and for the first time during this project, we discovered that some of us knew about red packets and some of us knew about green packets, and we had no clue that they were actually meant to do the exact same thing, but through different colors. Because green is considered the color of prosperity in Islamic world, and it just doesn't remain in the tradition or culture. I mean, interestingly, the DBS Bank actually introduced digital green packets for a festival in Indonesia. So if you know about the culture and if you can actually use it in the right way, you can align with what people think and like and believe and so on. This, of course, all of us see this, right? I mean, we've seen Nimbu Mirchi. Their Nimbu Mirchi is hung across homes, across vehicles, across trucks, across so many places. So why Nimbu Mirchi? Has anybody actually questioned why is, why so? And we know that it's the evil eye ward off, right? We don't want, matlab buri nazar na lage. That's what it is. But what is in it that actually keeps the evil eye away? Why Nimbu and why Mirchi? And of course, we asked this again a few times and 5 times, in fact. And I don't think we got a very convincing answer because surprisingly there isn't any. But one of the answers we got, which was very interesting, which is, both the chili and the lime have antibacterial properties, and they're supposed to keep well-being or guard well-being of people who have nimbu and mirchi hung at their doorsteps or vehicles or whatever. Not too convincing, but okay, maybe. Coming to the last bunch, which is the black and white in the colors of Asia research that we did, and of course of huge significance. So white is interesting in the Asian culture because right from funeral to brides, white is used across, and so is red, or so is black. So, where do you peg that? You have the white Taj Mahal, which is the greatest symbol of love. And then, of course, you saw the Laos pictures, which were at the funeral, people wear white, and so do some communities in India. And, there are communities which wear white at the weddings. So, white has a great significance, so does black. And the most well-known symbol from Asia across the world, the yin and the yang, which is black and white. And as designers, I think all of us know what is the significance, right? I mean, the good and the bad, the hot and cold, the fire and ice. It's got so many interpretations, but it's always the opposites. And what is the significance of it all? It's actually the balance, that the world stays balanced if you have, the balance of good and bad, the evil, and so all of this always needs to be kept in balance, and that this symbol actually tells us that balance is what we need to look at, and it's the most well-known symbol from Asia. An interesting story I picked up to share with you. Yeah, it's a wedding picture, but no, it's not two guys getting married. It's uh, It's a groom and his father. And as you might know, in many Islamic cultures, the bride and the groom actually don't face each other during wedding. So they are either in different rooms or there is a curtain between them, but they actually don't come face to face. So this is the groom's father who's actually taking the groom for the wedding, and they dress in black and white. And yeah, I mean, interestingly, they almost are dressed identical, but the father is not getting married. This is closer home. So it's a picture from 2nd October, and many of us are very familiar with the Gandhian principles of self-reliance, and how he used to weave his own cloth, and how he used to believe in doing everything himself, being self-reliant, Atmanirbhar, as we say it now. And in many cities in India, just to imbibe the principles and philosophy of what Gandhiji left for us, there are processions done by children who literally dress as Gandhi, and try to understand what Gandhi meant as his principles and what he actually tried to teach us about non-violence and self-reliance and so on. And these are very interesting images from many cities in India on the 2nd of October. And it's white. White actually does signify the peace that he was trying to tell the world about. So many stories, I mean, not 15,000, but hundreds of stories that we eventually managed to capture in the colors of Asia. And this is the actual location where the whole exhibition took place. at the Hong Kong Design Institute, where we actually curated artifacts, stories, images from around 13 countries and brought them to life. This exhibition was on for nearly a year at Hong Kong and saw thousands of visitors. Just some glimpses of the exhibition, and I will not go into the details because we're almost at the end of our time. But very interesting sections. As you can see, there was an Indian wedding section as well, and we had almost the havan happening there. And then you can see how red is interpreted across other cultures as well. We also had a popular culture section where you can see Bollywood and color on the extreme right of your screen. And we tried to figure what are the interpretations of colors in Bollywood in that section. And it also culminated into a book, which again I had the privilege to edit. So this is just a glimpse of the book that happened. And yeah, that's after the exhibition. That's me relaxing right in front of the exhibition. And very proud to say that we actually got a Design for Asia Culture Special Award of of repute for this entire exercise. And let's hope there are more researches ahead, because there's so much more to learn and there's so much more to understand. And we're just hoping to learn more of that. And there were workshops, again a whole lot of glimpses and just take in what all happened. There were workshops to learn how things are done. There were workshops to study, understand, experience, and there were food. And all of this culminated as part of Colors of Asia research. So if you want to learn culture, and I just want to sum this up and say that if you want to learn something about culture, you need to go deeper into it. And if you want to, if you ever stare at your own work as designers, just ask yourselves one question, that is it reflective of the culture that you come from? And if not, then how do we do that? That's really what I would say is the way forward. And yeah, that's all I have to say today. Again, ending with a quote that I really believe in by Mahatma Gandhi: "If you find your purpose, the means will definitely follow." So that's all I have for today, and I'm really happy to take questions. If you don't have questions right now, you could reach out to me on any of these, and I'm always happy to answer within 24 hours. And that's all I can say for today.
Thank you, Ashwini. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. We have only 1 minute before the next speaker comes
All
on.
right.
So please do send Ashwini your questions on the social handles that she outlined on her screen,
Sure.
social or email, and I'm sure she'll try and answer as many of them as she can.
Thank you, Suresh.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Ashwini. That
Thanks.
brings us to the end of this session. Our next speaker is Jabin Mora. He joins us from Mexico, and that's in about a minute from now. So I'll see you there. Bye.
Sure. Thank you. Bye.